Welcome back. I've got another story for you. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're ready to listen to a story today because I really like this story. This is a good one. I think you're both, or all of you are really going to enjoy it. Um, and before we take a look at it, let's talk about what kind of story this is. The story today is a folk tale. Can you say the word folk tale? Nice job. We've not read a folk tale before. So I'm happy to share one with you today. Now, when we talk about a folk tale, we're going to be reading about a character that has to solve a problem. So anytime we have a folk tale, we're going to read about a character who is solving a problem. Okay? Folk tales are fiction stories. So this is going to be a story just for fun. And it's one of our stories where you're not going to see the words of the story. You're just going to see four pictures because the story is broken down into four parts. We'll read one part at a time. We'll talk about each part, and I hope you really enjoy our folktale. Let's get to it. Okay, so I want you to check out the first picture for the first part of the story. Okay? The title of this story is called Timimoto. Can you say Timimoto? Good. And this folk tale comes to us from a country called Japan. Okay. And this special story from Japan, um, like we talked about at the beginning, is going to show a character trying to solve a problem. And we're going to read to find out what tools Timimoto uses along the way. Okay, remember, this week is all about learning about the different tools we use to help us do different jobs, and this folk tale is going to go right along with that. So let's get started. Many years ago, in a small village in Japan, an old woman and her husband were talking about their life's wishes. I have only one wish, said the woman. I am sad that we never had children. I wish that we could have a child, even if he were no bigger than my finger. The old man nodded his head and sighed. Later that day, the woman took her bucket to go fetch some water. She was walking along when she heard a cry coming from the ground next to the path. She looked down and saw a tiny baby, only 1 inch long, wrapped in a piece of red cloth. My wish has come true, cried the woman. She picked up the baby and cradled him in her hands. Filled with joy, she brought the baby home to her husband. They named him Timimoto. So that was the first part of our story. We can see the old woman that we read about, and we can see little Timimoto. Look how tiny he is in her hands. He's only about 1 inch long, and he can fit in the palm of the old woman's hands. Okay, so in that part, we found out that the old woman and her husband always wanted a child. And then she finds Timimoto wrapped in red cloth. Check out the second part of our story. Look at the illustration and try to figure out what is going on. I see the old woman and her husband, and I'm going to use my brain to think that this is probably Timimoto and that some time has passed because he is not a baby anymore. Let's read to find out what's going on. Timimoto grew up, but he never grew very tall. When he was 15 years old, he only stood as high as his mother's middle finger. On the day of his 15th birthday, Timimoto decided that he wanted to see the world. I am going on a long journey, he announced. We understand, son, said the old man. We too wanted to explore the world when we were younger. Let us give you some tools for your journey. The old woman fetched a sewing needle, slid it into a piece of straw, and tied it to Timimoto's belt. You will need a sword to protect yourself, she said. The old man went to the kitchen. He returned with a rice bowl and a chopstick. And you will need a boat and a paddle, he said to Timimoto. You can get far if you travel on the river. Thank you, said Timimoto. These tools will help me as I explore new places. Timimoto said goodbye to his parents. Be safe, they said to him. Watch out for the night giant who lives down the river. Timimoto hopped in his boat and paddled away. All right, so we found out a lot in this part of the story. Timimoto grew up, but he never grew very tall. But he needs to go on a journey. And the old woman and her husband give him some tools. She gives him a needle to use as a sword. Remember, Timimoto's only the size of her finger, so he's still really small. So he has a needle as a sword, and then the old man gives him a rice bowl and a chopstick to use as a boat. And at the end of this part of the story, we find out that there's a dangerous night giant that lives down the river. Let's see what happens. Okay, look at the picture for the third part of the story. Try to figure out what might be going on here. Look at this character and these characters. I wonder if this is the giant, or I wonder if this is just a normal person. Let's find out. Timimoto set out on his adventure to discover the world. As he was paddling along, he felt something sticky tap his shoulder. He turned and saw a huge frog crack or a huge frog on a rock behind his boat. The frog was trying to catch him with his tongue. Wait, thought Timimoto. I have the perfect tool for this. He raised his chopstick high in the air and whacked the frog on the nose. The frog dived into the water and swam away. Later, Timimoto arrived at a small village. He saw a crowd of people running toward the houses. He got out of his boat and walked into the village. He spoke to a man who was pushing a cart of vegetables. Excuse me, sir. Why is everyone running? He asked. The man looked down and said, You must be new in town, young man. Hasn't anyone told you about the giant who comes out at sunset? Suddenly, Timimoto remembered what his parents had told him. This must be where the night giant lives, he thought. Timimoto thanked the man and raced back to his boat. Okay, so here's Timimoto, and this is the man that he was talking to. The man warns him about the giant. Okay, and everybody is starting to run away at sunset to stay safe from the giant because he comes out at night. In the next part of the story, we see the giant and we see Timimoto. I wonder what Timimoto is going to do to try to stop the giant. Let's find out. Timimoto ran toward the dock, but it was too late. The sun had already set behind a hill. What would happen next? Suddenly, the ground started to rumble and shake. The night giant appeared behind poor Timimoto. I am hungry for a big dinner, the giant roared. You are very small, but you'll do for my first bite. The giant scooped up Timimoto and popped him in its mouth. Inside the giant's mouth, Timimoto knew just what to do. Mother gave me this sword for a reason, he thought. Timimoto lifted the sword high above his head and brought it down on the giant's tongue. The giant let out a terrible scream. Timimoto leaped out of the giant's mouth and landed safely on the ground. That hurt, the giant cried. I will never return to this village again. He whined as he ran back into the forest. One by one, the townspeople came out of their houses and surrounded Timimoto. You have defeated the night giant, they cheered. Thank you, our friend. Timimoto bowed his head, then got into his boat and paddled toward home. Wow, what a story. So Timimoto is able to save the village and save himself. Do you think Timimoto would have been able to solve this problem of defeating the night giant without the tools that his mother and father had given him? I don't think he would have been able to do it either. First, he needed the rice bowl and the chopstick to use as tools, as a boat and a paddle to get down the river. Then, when the night giant was trying to eat Timimoto, he really needed the tool that his mother had given him. He needed the needle to use as a sword to help save himself and the village from the night giant. So Timimoto would never have been able to solve this problem without using the tools that were given to him. And those tools saved him and the village. Great job listening to our story, my friends. We'll talk about this story more at school.